The storm had rolled in fast. Dense, billowing clouds had strangled the evening sky, wrapping the countryside in an unnatural gloom. The wind screamed, shaking the small house's windows like a ghost trying to get in. Lisa was standing at the sink washing the last of the dinner plates when she heard it. A sound so dim, so tenuous, that at first she feared she had hallucinated it. But then it came again. A shrill, desperate whine. Lisa felt her heart stop, her hands slippery with soapy water. Her heart skipped a beat. She glanced toward the kitchen table, where her husband, Mark, and their 12-year-old daughter, Emily, were finishing their meals. Mark placed his fork down and narrowed his eyes. "Did you hear that?" Emily was already pushing her chair back. It sounded like a puppy. Lisa dried her hands on a towel, trying to hear. The wind still howled, but underneath it, that cry. It wasn't just a sound, it was a plea. Someone needed help. Without saying another word, her family bolted for the front door. Mark picked up a flashlight. Emily slipped on her rain boots, and Lisa shoved a thick sweater over her shoulders. As soon as they went out, the wind hit them. The rain came, cold and steady, drenching the wooden porch in an instant. It was a dark night, the trees tossing vigorously in the storm. And then they saw it. A small, shivering figure was curled up at the base of an old oak tree at the edge of their property. Lisa's breath hitched. It was tiny, too small, sopping wet, impotent and utterly alone. A puppy, or at least that's how it appeared. Emily gasped, "We have to help it." Lisa's instincts told her to hold back, but before she could react, Emily was already running toward the animal. Mark rushed behind her, shining the light over the little creature. Its fur was matted with mud, wet all the way to the skin. Its little ribs jutted painfully. It didn't run. It didn't growl. It just watched them. Lisa's stomach twisted. Something was wrong. The way it regarded them, too motionless, too knowing. With a tentative hand, Mark knelt down. "Hey there, buddy. You're safe now." The puppy flinched at first. Then it took a step forward. Lisa held her breath. Golden eyes, striking, piercing. There was something about them that was too intelligent, too aware. The puppy stepped closer, shakily, its bony little body having a hard time supporting itself. And then it collapsed. Emily made a choked sound, then gathered the little critter into her arms. Lisa's heart pounded. "Wait!" But it was too late. Pressing the soaked, shivering puppy to her chest, Emily stood, tears of relief filling her eyes. "It's okay," she whispered. "You're safe now." The puppy's golden gaze met hers, and it stopped shaking. Just like that. The storm raged around them, yet in that instant, there was only silence. Lisa experienced a cold wave running up her back. Something wasn't right. Mark put a hand on her shoulder. "Lisa, let's get it inside." She wanted to say no. "It's missing," but wanted to tell them to put it back. But she didn't, for the simple fact that deep down, a little voice said, "It's already too late. This wasn't just a rescue. That was just the start of something much, much bigger. And the reality of this puppy was a truth they were never meant to discover." The heat of the house ought to have felt soothing. The storm roared outside, wind shaking the windows, rain beating against the roof like a relentless alarm. But inside, the atmosphere felt weighty. Lisa watched from the doorway as Emily gingerly set the sodden puppy on a thick, folded towel on the floor in front of the fireplace. Its little body quivered violently. Mark knelt next to it, moving his frail little back with slow, gentle strokes. "Poor thing," he murmured. It had to have been out there for hours. Lisa's arms remained stitched across her chest. Something about this didn't sit right. She watched Emily gently pat the puppy's wet hair with a new towel, her face alight with relief. "I'm gonna get him something to eat," Emily said, leaping to her feet and dashing toward the kitchen. Mark shot Lisa a small smile. She's already attached. Lisa didn't return it. She couldn't. Her gaze remained affixed to the puppy. It had stopped shaking now. It should have been spent, unable to move, but instead, it was staring at her. Unblinking, golden eyes gleaming faintly in the firelight. Lisa's breath hitched. She knew that stare. Not the gaze of a lost, fearful puppy. Not the gaze of an animal looking for companionship. This was something else. Something calculating. Her heart beat through her chest with each pulse. "It's just frightened," she kept telling herself. "That's all." The kitchen light overhead blared on, and a moment later Emily emerged clutching a small bowl of shredded chicken. The puppy perked up. Not in the way that Lisa thought, though. It didn't sniff the air, didn't wag its tail, didn't act like a normal, starving animal would act. Instead, it watched Emily, closely, patiently. Emily knelt beside it and set the bowl carefully on the towel. "Here you go, buddy," she crooned. "You need to eat." The puppy didn't move. Lisa's fingers clawed into her arms. "Eat," she thought. "Just eat. Please." Mark let out a soft chuckle. "Guess he's just nervous." Emily leaned forward, taking a small handful of shredded chicken and bringing it closer. The puppy's nose twitched. Then it finally moved. But not toward the food. Toward Emily's hand. Lisa's entire body locked up. It didn't lunge, didn't snap. But the way it opened its mouth, something about it was wrong. Just a split second too late. Too controlled. Lisa felt the violent twist of her stomach, and then the puppy stopped, and it turned toward her. Lisa's throat seized up. The air shifted. She couldn't explain it. But in that moment, she knew. But she knew with every fiber of her being. This was no ordinary puppy. And whatever it wasn't here by accident. By the time everyone went to bed, the storm had finally calmed. The wind had calmed, and the rain had become a gentle drizzle on the windows. But Lisa didn't feel relief. She was lying in bed with her eyes open, staring at the ceiling. She could still see those yellow eyes, still feel the weight of that stare, like it had burrowed into her skin. Next to her, Mark was fast asleep, breathing slow and steady. Lisa breathed out, willing herself to relax. Perhaps I'm just dreaming up a blip. Perhaps she was simply overreacting. She sighed softly, turned to her side and shut her eyes. And then a gentle creak rang out down the hall. Lisa's heart stopped. She held her breath. Another creak, closer this time, slow, careful, like something was moving. Lisa's fingers curled on the edge of the blanket. Mark stirred next to her but didn't wake. "It's just Emily," she told herself, getting up for water. But in her heart, she knew it was not. Lisa swallowed nervously, propelling herself upward. The bedroom was dark, the hallway light creating strange silhouettes under the door. She listened. For a moment, there was silence, and then another step. Lisa's stomach twisted. And then, just outside their bedroom door, a scratch. Lisa's pulse skyrocketed. Not a sharp, frantic scratch. Numbers slow, deliberate. As if it wanted her to know it was there. Her throat tightened. She called out, shaking Mark's shoulder. "Mark," she whispered. He groaned, barely stirring. "Listen." Mark let out a breath and rubbed his eyes. "This is probably only Emily's scratch." Lisa flinched. Mark froze. His eyes snapped open. He had heard it. Lisa didn't move, didn't breathe. And then, suddenly, silence. Whatever it was, she had been waiting. Mark threw his legs off of the bed, already grabbing for his phone. He opened it, the low glow lighting his face. Lisa clutched the blanket. Mark sighed, rubbing his temple. "I'll check." Lisa grabbed his arm. "Wait." She wasn't sure what to expect. Maybe another sound, maybe nothing at all. But then, the door handle turned. Lisa took in a quick breath. The knob twisted once, then again, and then it stopped. For a second, there was just quietness. And then, a soft whimper, a familiar whimper. The sound of a lost puppy. Lisa's stomach dropped. Mark clenched the phone tighter. Neither of them moved. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it disappeared. No more scratching, no more whimpering, no more sound at all. Lisa swallowed, her pulse thunderous in her ears. Mark sighed, looking toward the door. "I?" A loud bang echoed from downstairs. Lisa jumped. There was a voice suddenly cutting through the silence. "Mom? Dad?" She sounded panicked. Lisa and Mark jumped out of bed. Whatever was going on, it wasn't done. And deep down, Lisa knew. It was just the beginning. Lisa and Mark burst from their bedroom, almost colliding in the hallway. Emily's quaky voice rang from downstairs again. "Mom? Dad?" Lisa's pulse hammered. "Emily, what's wrong?" No response. Just the sound of their daughter's breathing. Then, a soft shuffle. Downstairs, near the living room. Lisa's blood ran cold. Something wasn't right. Mark led the charge, grabbing the railing as he raced down the steps. Lisa trailed behind, each step tying a knot in her gut. And then they saw her. Emily was frozen in the middle of the living room, her face white. She wasn't looking at them. She was staring at the front door. Lisa's heart stopped, because the door was standing wide open. Cold night air swept in, the smell of damp earth and something else. Something wrong. Mark lunged forward and took Emily's shoulders. "Are you okay?" Emily's lips trembled. She raised a trembling hand and pointed. Lisa glanced over, following Emily's eye. And then she saw it. A shadow. At the top of the stair, motionless, silent, watching. Lisa's lungs locked up. The shape was tall and still. The dim kitchen light barely lit it, casting strange, distorted shadows on the walls. For a split second, just 1 second, Lisa thought she saw golden eyes. The puppy. But this wasn't a puppy. This was something else. It was something that should not be there. Lisa's hands clawed at Mark's arm. "Mark," she whispered, "us upstairs." Mark's breath hitched. He turned his head slowly, and then the shadow moved. A step forward, then another. It made the floorboard squeak under its weight. Lisa couldn't breathe. The shadow emerged fully in the light. Lisa's vision blurred. It was the puppy, but also not the way it used to be. Its hair was matted and still coming wet. Its ribs were still protruding from its gaunt body, but its eyes were wrong. Not golden, not warm, not alive. Lisa's stomach lurched because the puppy was not standing like a dog. It was upright, as if it was a person, on its hind legs, staring, still too still. A smile, a human smile, cracked across its muzzle. And then it spoke. "You should have left me out there." Lisa's knees buckled. The world tilted. Emily gave a strangled scream, holding Mark tight as the puppy moved to take another step. Lisa's vision blurred. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real, and yet the object that resembled the puppy continued to smile, kept staring. And then the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the house. Lisa's breath caught and her fingers clamped tighter around the fabric of Mark's shirt. All that remained was the sound of Emily's ragged, panicked breathing, and then, click. A light flickered back on. Just the soft light from the kitchen, throwing jagged shadows on the walls. Lisa's heart pounded in her ears. The puppy was gone. Her breath hitched. It had been sitting right there, but now, nothing. Just the empty hallway. The air was heavy, stifling. Something in the house had changed. Mark's voice was hoarse. What the hell was that? Emily was shaking. Mom, it talked. Lisa put a hand to her forehead, her vision swimming. Number, that wasn't real. It couldn't be. Dogs didn't stand like that. Dogs didn't speak. And yet, she had seen it. Lisa swallowed the knot in her throat. It's not a dog. She turned to Mark, whose face was pale. Then what the hell is it? Lisa had no answer, because in her heart she was subconsciously terrified of what it might be. A sudden noise broke the silence. A slow, deliberate scratch. From the ceiling. Lisa's blood ran cold. Emily clutched Mark's arm. It's in the attic. Mark swallowed hard. That's impossible. Lisa wasn't so sure. The scratches continued. Slow, deep, waiting. Lisa clutched Mark's wrist, whispering, "We need to get out of here." Mark nodded. He turned to Emily. "We're leaving, right now." Emily didn't hesitate. The three of them headed for the front door. Lisa reached for the handle and froze. The door was locked. She twisted the bolt and her fingers shook. It wouldn't move. Mark pushed past her, pulling at it. Nothing. Lisa breathed in ragged gulps, and then, click, the kitchen light went out. Pitch black. Emily let out a choked sob. "Mom!" Lisa held her tight. "Stay close." And then the whisper came, right behind them. "You brought me inside." Lisa whirled around. Nothing. But the air was wrong. It wasn't empty. Something was there, watching, waiting, and then Lisa saw it. Two glowing golden eyes from the staircase, looking down at them. But it wasn't at the top. It was crawling, half in the shadows, half in the light. Its limbs were bent wrong. It wasn't a puppy. It had never been. And now it was coming for them. Lisa seized Emily, pushing her behind Mark. "Run!" The thing lurched forward. That sent the hallways into chaos. And for the first time since that night in the storm, Lisa realized the truth. This wasn't a rescue. It was a trap. Lisa ran. Her bare feet bashed the hardwood floor, the air coming out of her in ragged, panicked gasps. Behind her, something moved. Fast. Too fast. Mark had Emily by the hand, pulling her toward the back door. Lisa didn't even have thoughts anymore. All she knew was that they had to leave. That thing, whatever it was not a dog. It never had been. The hallway light flickered erratically, jerking out jagged shadows from the walls. Those golden eyes festered from the shadows, trained upon them like a predator on a hunt. Lisa shoved Emily forward. "Go! Go!" Mark was the first to reach the back door. His fingers fumbled at the lock, his breath trembling. He yanked the knob. Nothing. Lisa's stomach plunged. The lock wouldn't budge. What the hell? Mark rapidly turned the knob, locked, sealed shut. Number. Emily whimpered, clinging to Lisa's sleeve. "Mom." Lisa spun around. The hallway was empty. No more golden eyes, no more crawling shadow, just the glimmering light and the silence. But Lisa knew better. It was still here, watching, waiting. Her heart thumped like a drum in her ears. Mark continued to push the door, cursing quietly. "Damn it, it won't." Thump. Lisa's blood turned to ice. The noise had emanated from the ceiling above them. Emily squeezed Lisa's arm. "Mom!" Lisa tilted her head back gradually, and that's when she saw it. An extended crack streaked across the ceiling. Something moved inside it. Lisa's throat went dry. Number not inside. Behind it. There was something pushing against the wood, something big. Mark seized Lisa's wrist, his face colorless. "We need to move, now!" Lisa nodded, gripping Emily's hand as they retreated from the door. And then, the ceiling split open. The wood creaked as it yawned open, dust and splinters cascading down. Lisa yanked Emily back as a clawed hand reached through the gap. Long, too long, fur-covered, yet the digits were all wrong. Too human. Mark pulled Lisa into the hallway. "Go!" Lisa fell forward and dragged Emily with her. The hallway felt longer than she remembered, the shadows pounding, shifting. Something had been playing with them, keeping them here, trapping them. Lisa's heart pounded. Then another sound, not from the ceiling, from the front door. A knock. Lisa froze. 3 knocking sounds, slow and deliberate. Knock, knock, knock. Her chest tightened. Mark's breath came out sharp. "Who the hell?" Lisa nervously shook her head. "Don't." Mark rested his fingers over the handle. Another knock. Lisa's stomach twisted. The knocking was not from the outside, except it was coming from the inside. All touches of the other side of the door. Lisa's vision blurred. "How? What?" Emily whimpered. "Mom." Then a voice, low, almost familiar. "You mustn't have taken me in." Lisa's entire body locked up. Her knees nearly buckled. Mark's fingers shook. Lisa gasped, glancing over at Emily, her heart racing. "Run!" Emily's eyes widened. Lisa pushed her daughter toward the stairs. Mark followed. They didn't look back, didn't stop. Because whatever lived in this house, it didn't want them to leave. It wanted to keep them. Forever. Lisa's legs were on fire as she charged up the stairs, pulling Emily in her wake. Mark followed close behind, his breaths sharp, ragged. The knocking continued. 3 slow, purposeful thuds against the interior of the front door. Knock, knock, knock. But they no longer stopped to listen. There was something in the house with them. Something that is not supposed to exist. Lisa's mind was racing. The puppy, if she could still call it that, was playing with them, taunting them, and worst of all, it didn't seem in a hurry. Like it already knew how this would all turn out. Lisa and her family made it to the top of the stairs and rushed into the master bedroom. Mark banged the door shut behind them, his fingers shaking as he locked it. Lisa kicked the dresser, hurling it against the door. Emily squeezed her mother's arm, her small body quaking. "Mom," she whispered. "What is it?" Lisa didn't know. She wished she did. Mark was walking in circles, hands on his head. "This doesn't make sense. This isn't possible." Lisa made a low swallow, gathering her thoughts. "The windows. Just get out through the windows." Mark paused, his eyes flitting to the largest window in the room. Lisa moved fast. She unlocked it and threw it open, and froze. Her stomach dropped. Number not possible, not real. The window was bricked up. Not glass, not the backyard, just a solid wall of bricks. Lisa was panting hard. Her hands flew to her mouth. Mark made a strangled sound. "What the hell?" Lisa stumbled back. Emily shook her head violently. "That wasn't there before. That wasn't—" And then a scratching sound, right outside the door. Lisa's breath hitched, slow, deep, scraping by claws against the timber. A soft whisper followed. "You can't leave." Lisa's stomach closed up in agony. Emily let out a choked sob. Mark grabbed Lisa's arm. "We gotta break the window." Bang! The door shook violently. Lisa jumped back. Emily screamed, "Bang!" The dresser quivered, skidding forwards a little. Lisa's vision blurred. Something was trying to come in. No, not trying. It was playing, and then silence. Not just from the door, from the entire house. The air felt wrong, thick, heavy. A prickly feeling of being observed crept over Lisa's skin. Mark was breathing hard. His fists balled up stiffly. Emily's tiny fingers curled around Lisa's wrist. "Mom." Lisa didn't dare move, didn't even blink. She could feel it. Somewhere, waiting, watching. Mark stepped forward, leaning his ear against the door. Lisa's breath caught. "Don't." She wanted to scream it, wanted to stop him, but then the door handle turned. Lisa's heart stopped, not violently, not forced, just a gentle twist, slow, patient, as if it had all eternity. Mark jerked back. Lisa took Emily and hugged her closer. The room felt smaller, like the walls were closing in on me, and then a voice, software familiar, Emily's voice, through the door from the other side. "Mom! Dad! Why are you hiding?" Lisa squeezed her eyes shut. Number. Emily was right here. So then, what the hell was outside the door? Mark's body locked up. Emily's breath hitched. "Mom, that's my voice." All of Lisa shook from head to toe. The voice came again, a perfect copy. "Why won't you let me in?" Lisa let out a strangled sob, covering Emily's mouth with a hand. The handle twisted again. Lisa couldn't breathe, couldn't move. And then, everything went silent. For a long, terrible moment, the house was empty, dead. Lisa clutched Emily's sleeve. The door didn't open. Nothing moved. And then very softly, a whisper, just at the crack of the door. "You brought me inside." Lisa collapsed to her knees. Her weight crushed terror down on her, and for the first time in her life, she realized she may not make it out of this. The fingers of Lisa's left hand grated the fabric of Emily's pajama sleeve. The fibers taut and taut again, but the hands trembled, and the other held Emily to her bosom, and to her so too, that the grip was almost painful. The right hand, so close. The whisper from behind the door still echoed in the skull. "You brought me inside." Beside her, Mark was breathing ragged. He had stepped back from the door, his hands clenched into fists. His jaw was so clenched, Lisa thought his teeth would crack. But the one that tore open her heart the most was Emily, the tiny, shivering shape wedged into Lisa's side. She was just a child, and she was stuck in this nightmare with them. Lisa's mind raced. Think, Lisa, think. They couldn't stay here, but the house did not want them to leave. The windows were bricked up. The doors refused to open. And now, it was learning their voices. Lisa took a shaky breath. "Mark!" Mark's head jerked toward her. His eyes were wild. "What?" Lisa gulped, her throat as dry as dust. "We have to find a different exit." Mark let out a hollow laugh. "Oh, you think?" He gestured toward the bricked-up window. "I don't know if you've noticed, Lisa, but we're trapped. Every door, every window. Not the attic." Mark froze. Lisa's own heart was racing at the idea, but it was their only chance. There was a tiny crawl-space window in the attic. If they could get up there, break it open, maybe they could get onto the roof. It was a long shot, but it was better than sitting here to die. Mark sucked in breath and then nodded. "Okay." Lisa faced Emily, cradling her daughter's face in her hands. "Baby, I need you close to me, okay? Don't let go." Emily nodded, tears streaming down her face. Lisa kissed her forehead. "We're getting out of here." She just prayed that she wasn't lying. The crawl space. After a moment, Mark moved and guided them down the darkened hall. The house felt wrong, too quiet, like the actual walls were holding their breath. Lisa could not stop glancing over her shoulder. She still felt the heft of that thing's gaze, but she saw nothing. No golden eyes, no shadows, just the suffocating silence. They came to the entrance to the attic. Mark yanked the cord. With a groan, the wooden hatch swung down, exposing a narrow, creaky ladder. Lisa exhaled sharply. It was now or never. Mark climbed up first and vanished into the dark. Then Emily. Lisa was just about to follow when a voice from the end of the hallway. Lisa. Lisa's entire body locked up. It was her mother's voice, her mother's voice. Lisa turned slowly and saw her. "And are you still at the end of the hall?" Smiling. Her mother. Except it had been 8 years since her mother died. Lisa's blood froze. This wasn't real. This wasn't real, but the woman, the thing, only cocked its head. "Lisa, don't leave me again." Tears blurred Lisa's vision. The words, they were the last words her mother had ever said to her, and this thing knew that. It knew. Lisa choked on a sob. It knew her. It was playing with her. And then it moved, one step, then another. Lisa whimpered. "Lisa!" Mark's voice brought her back around. She turned. Emily was grabbing for her. Lisa snatched her daughter's hand and scrambled up the ladder. The instant she hoisted herself into the attic, the hatch slammed shut below her. Lisa screamed. Mark surged forward, tugging at the door. It wouldn't open. Lisa pounded on it. "Mark! Mark!" From the other side, Mark's panicked voice. "Lisa, there's something down here." Then silence. Lisa gasped, her breath catching in her throat. Emily screamed. Lisa whipped around and froze. All the way in the back of the attic, 2 glowing yellow eyes looked at her. Lisa's blood turned to ice. It was here, in the attic, with them. And they had nowhere else to run. Lisa hit the ground hard. Her body slammed onto the roof, tumbling against the slanted tiles. A sharp pain shot through her shoulder as she fought to keep herself from slipping over the edge. Wind roared past her ears. Her vision spun. For a second, all she could hear was her own labored breathing. And then, Emily. Lisa's head snapped up. Emily was gripping the rooftop vent, quaking, her wide eyes full of fear. Lisa's heart twisted. "Baby, are you okay?" Emily nodded, but her lips quivered. Lisa attempted to move. A sharp pain shot through her ankle, not broken, but bad. Lisa gritted her teeth. They had gotten out, but had they really escaped? Lisa faced the attic window. Darkness. A light opened here like a mouth. It swallowed the moon's dimness. Nothing moved inside, nothing looked back. Lisa's breath hitched. Had it let them go? Number? She didn't believe that. Not for a second. Lisa turned to Emily. "We have to move." Emily remained frozen in place. Lisa took her daughter's wrist. "Now, Emily." The little girl gasped and began scrambling forward, holding Lisa's arm tightly. Lisa pushed past the pain in her ankle and maneuvered Emily across the slanted roof. The brink was only a few feet away. If they could get to the drain pipe, they could crawl down it. Lisa took a deep breath. One step at a time. Emily's small hands clutched her mother's sleeve as they kept going. Almost there. The night was too quiet. The air too still. Lisa's stomach twisted. Where was Mark? The last sound she'd heard was his screams. She balled her fingers into fists. She needed to find him. Lisa was at the gutter, and she tested it. It wobbled, not great. But it would have to do. She turned to Emily. "I'll go first, okay? Just hang on and don't let go." Emily swallowed hard. Lisa hung over to the side, her hands stinging as the metal cut into her. She didn't want to think about the 4-story drop below her. Carefully, she descended. One step, then another. Then, a noise. Lisa froze. It was coming from inside the attic. A soft rap, slowly, methodically on the glass. Tap, tap. Lisa's entire body tensed. Emily looked down at her, wide-eyed. Lisa turned her head slowly toward the window, golden eyes, watching them. Lisa's stomach plummeted. It was still there. It hadn't given up. It had been waiting. Emily gave a choked, strangled whimper. "Mom!" Lisa gazed up at her daughter, and that's when she saw it. A shadow, moving behind Emily. Lisa's blood turned to ice. "Emily, jump!" Emily's eyes widened. Lisa released her grip on the drain pipe and hit the ground hard. Pain radiated through her legs, but she pushed herself up. She opened her arms. Emily hesitated, then jumped. Lisa saw her falling back behind it. They fell on the grass, Lisa trying to catch her breath. Above them, a low growl. Lisa's breath hitched. She looked up, and the golden eyes were still fixed upon them. Still smiling. It had let them go, for now. Lisa held tightly onto Emily against her chest. She felt sick to her stomach, horrifyingly. This wasn't over, not even close, because whatever that thing was, it was not finished toying with them. Lisa's lungs were on fire, and she struggled to breathe as she squeezed Emily in her tight embrace. Her heartbeat thudded so loudly in her ears that she couldn't hear much else. They had made it. They were out of the house. But why hadn't it felt like they had escaped? Lisa willed herself to look up. The attic window remained unshuttered. A black thing was lurking just inside, watching. Its golden eyes shone in the moonlight. Still grinning, still waiting. Lisa shuddered. It might have drawn Emily back inside. That could have pulled both of them down into the dark. So why didn't it? Because it wants to play. Lisa's stomach lurched painfully. This wasn't over. Not yet. She needed to move. Now, Lisa pulled Emily closer and willed herself to rise. Her ankle ached, but she refused to feel the fire. "Come on, baby," she whispered, her voice raspy. Emily's arms were around Lisa's waist, her small body shaking. Lisa twisted, surveying the yard. Her breath hitched. The car. Where was the car? He had parked it in the driveway only hours earlier. But now, gone, as if it had never existed. Lisa's head swam. Number. The roads were empty. It was dead silence in the neighborhood, like the whole world had disappeared. Lisa swallowed hard. None of this made sense. The house had attempted to trap them. But now, it was releasing them. Lisa had a sick feeling that the house itself was not the real trap. The thing inside it was. And now, it had let them run free, like a hunter releasing prey. Lisa's chest tightened. She grabbed Emily's hand. "We have to find Mark." Emily sniffled. "Where is he?" Lisa didn't know, but she had to find out. She turned toward the house and froze. The front door was wide open. Lisa's stomach plummeted. Her bones knew that it was an invitation, a taunt. "Come back inside." Lisa's breath shook. Not a chance. She turned and began to drag Emily with her. They ran. As Lisa ran down the street, Emily holding onto her side, the pavement was cold beneath Lisa's bare feet. They had to find help. A neighbor, a passing car, anyone. But as they sped along, Lisa's chest began to tighten. Something was wrong. The houses, there was no variation in them. The same darkened windows, the same empty porches, like a loop. Lisa stopped in her tracks. She turned around. Her blood ran cold. The house, it was right behind them. They had been running for 5 minutes. But somehow, they had not moved at all. Lisa's head spun. Emily let out a choked sob. "Mom, what's happening?" Lisa's pulse raced. They were trapped, even outside the house. It still had them. Lisa whimpered. They had nowhere left to run. Lisa's chest heaved in front of the house. No! This wasn't possible. They had been running down the street trying to get away, yet here they were, back where they started. Emily clung to Lisa's waist, shivering. "Mom," her voice was a trembling whisper. How did we come back here?" Lisa had no answer. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. But the house, their house, stood before them. The front door was wide open. The lights inside flickered. An invitation, a silent dare. Lisa clenched her hands into fists. It was toying with them. Not only inside the house, outside as well. Lisa had assumed they were not being held. But this thing never intended to release them. It was just having fun. Tears burned in Lisa's eyes. She had never known such despair, so fucking trapped. She looked over at Emily, who was trembling violently. Lisa bent down and put her hands on her daughter's shoulders. "Listen to me, baby. We're going to get through this." Emily's lower lip trembled. How? Lisa had no idea. The streets were empty. No cars, no sounds, no life. It was as if the world had been wiped clean, as if the only thing alive now was the house. Her hands trembled. Something in her gut told her there was no way out but through it. Lisa's stomach tightened in pain. Go back inside? Number. That was insane. But what choice did she have? They couldn't run. They couldn't hide. And Mark was still in there. Lisa drew in a shaky breath, willing herself to stand. Emily looked up at her with big, teary eyes. Lisa forced back a lump in her throat. "We have to go back," Emily whimpered. Lisa held her tightly, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I swear to you, baby," she said, "I won't let it take us." Emily's small hands gripped Lisa's sleeve. Lisa turned toward the house. The air felt thicker, like it was watching them, like it knew. Lisa took one step forward. She stepped onto the porch, which creaked under her weight. Emily trailed, clenching Lisa's arm. Lisa took a deep breath and entered. The air shifted. The lights dimmed, and behind them, the door slammed shut. Lisa whipped around, her pulse spiked. The door is locked. Her breathing quickened. A creeping, sinking sensation crawled up her back. They were inside, and now it had them. Emily hung on to her mother's side. "Mom, it's different." Lisa's breath hitched. Emily was right. The house had changed. The furniture had retained its position. The walls, the ceiling, the floor, all of it exactly the same. And yet, it wasn't. The air was wrong. The walls seemed to breathe. The shadows crept when they weren't watching. And the worst part? The house felt bigger, as if they had entered a different realm altogether. Lisa curled her fingers around Emily's wrist. They had to find Mark, fast. Lisa stepped forward, careful not to trip. The floorboards creaked under her. They turned the corner and stopped cold. Lisa's breath hitched. The hallway was longer, impossible. It used to go directly to the kitchen, but now it stretched endlessly. The walls were narrower, darker. Emily gasped and clutched Lisa's sleeve. Lisa forced herself to move. One step, then another. They walked and walked and walked. But the hallway never ended. Lisa's stomach twisted. This wasn't real. They must have walked this hallway 1,000 times. It was never this long, never this empty. Lisa stopped in her tracks. Her pulse pounded. They were getting nowhere. They were going in circles. Lisa turned around, and her blood ran cold. The front door was gone, as though it had never existed whatsoever. Emily whimpered, "Mom, I don't like this." Lisa struggled to not scream. They were trapped. Completely, utterly trapped. And worst of all, inside this moving, never-ending domicile somewhere, Mark was still in here, waiting, Or worse, it had already found him first. Lisa's stomach churned. Her breath shook as she turned back to the infinite hallway. They had to keep moving, had to find a way out, before it found them first. Lisa squeezed Emily's hand so firmly that she could feel the blood leaving her fingers. The air inside the house seemed thicker, heavier, alive. The hallway that previously had led to the kitchen had extended into a boundless abyss. The front door, gone. The air inside was stale, stifling. With every breath, it was as if she was swallowing dust and decay. Lisa forced herself forward. "Come on, baby. We have to keep moving." Emily's little fingers dug into Lisa's palm. "Mom, it's changing." Lisa stopped. Emily was right. The walls weren't merely long. They were moving. It peeled back in slow, curling waves. The ceiling exhaled and inhaled like lungs, breathing. And the floor, it pulsed beneath their feet. Lisa's stomach lurched. The house was alive, and it was watching them. Lisa tightened her grip on Emily's hand. "Don't look at it, baby. Just keep walking." Emily nodded, but Lisa could hear her sniffles. She fought so hard to be brave. Lisa had to be strong for her, for both of them. She turned her focus forward. Find Mark. Get out. That was all that mattered. They kept walking and walking and walking. Lisa's stomach churned. This hallway had no end. It was looping. Each time she blinked, the walls rearranged. The doors disappeared. The ceiling pressed lower. The air grew thicker. Lisa felt like walking further into the unnatural, like she didn't belong here, like she was trespassing. Then a sound, a whisper. Lisa's breath hitched. Emily stiffened beside her. "Did you hear that?" Emily whispered. Lisa's skin crawled. She nodded. They kept walking, slowly now, listening. The whispering grew louder, more voices, more layers. It was 100 voices overlapping, sounding like murmurs, as if the house was muttering to itself. Lisa swallowed. She turned the corner and froze. A door. Not a normal door. This one was different. The frame was warped, twisted, almost as if something had melted it. The handle was rusted. The wood was breathing, and behind it, the whispers stopped. Lisa's pulse pounded. She didn't want to open it. She didn't even want to feel it. But deep down, she knew. Mark was behind that door. Lisa's throat went dry. She turned to Emily. "I need you to keep behind me, okay?" Emily nodded, her small hands shaking. Lisa turned back to the door. She reached for the handle. Her fingers barely grazed it. Suddenly, the door swung open by itself. Lisa held her breath in a gasp. The room was dark. There was no light save a pale yellow bulb that hung from the ceiling. And in the middle of the room, Mark. Lisa gasped. He was sitting in a chair, completely still. His arms drooped weakly at his sides. His head was bowed forward. Lisa rushed inside. "Mark!" No response. She reached for his face. His skin was ice cold. Lisa's stomach dropped. No, no, no!" She shook him. His head tilted up. Lisa screamed. His eyes were gone, not gouged out, just missing, as if they'd never even been there. Lisa staggered back. Emily screamed behind her. Then, Mark smiled, a slow, unnatural grin. And then, in a voice that was not his own, "Lisa, why did you bring her back?" Lisa's entire body locked up. Her blood turned to ice. That wasn't Mark. The thing in the chair. It was using his voice, mocking her. Lisa was breathing short, panicked gasps. Her mind screamed, "Run!" but her body wouldn't move. The Mark thing cocked its head to the side, the grin on its face widening, and then it stood. Too fast? Too smooth? Lisa took Emily's hand and ran. They bolted from the room, slamming the door after them. Lisa's pulse thundered. Footsteps, heavy, slow, following them. Lisa's entire body shook. They had to get out, before it was too late. Before the walls closed in. Lisa screamed. Lisa ran. Her lungs had begun to burn. Her legs felt like lead, but she kept running. Emily's tiny hand was clutched tightly in hers, and she felt the little girl fighting to match her pace. Behind them, footsteps, slow, heavy, wrong. The creature wearing Mark's face was tracking them, mocking them. "Lisa." Its voice was too silky, too smooth. "You can't leave." Lisa turned sharply around a corner, pulling Emily along. The hall twisted and turned, distorting in her vision. The house was not letting them leave. It was changing, adapting. It wanted to preserve them forever. Lisa pushed forward. She had no idea where she was going. All she knew was that she couldn't stop. But then the air shifted. A light, faint, flickering, but real. Lisa's heart leaped. The front door, it was back, wide open. Radiant porch light pouring into the endless dark. Lisa's breath hitched. A trap? A trick? It didn't matter. It was their only chance. Lisa went to Emily, her hands shivering. Baby, listen to me," she gasped. "You run as fast as you can. You don't stop. Whatever you hear, don't stop. Do you understand?" Tears shone in Emily's blue eyes. "Mom." Lisa cupped her face. "I love you, baby." Then she shoved her forward. "Run!" Emily paused for half a moment, then she ran, straight for the door. Lisa turned. The Mark thing was at the end of the hallway, smiling. It lifted a finger, twitched it in front of her like a parent punishing a child. Lisa breathed in shakes and wheezes. "Not this time," she said softly. She snatched up a vase from a side table and hurled it at the wall. The mirror next to the door shattered. For a moment, the house wailed. The walls trembled. Lisa did not stick around to find out what happened next. She turned and ran. She ran toward the light, her feet hardly touching the ground. Emily was almost there. The Mark thing moved, fast, too fast. Lisa threw herself forward. She lunged for Emily. Her hands gripped her daughter's shoulders, and with whatever else she had left, she pushed her from behind into the door. Emily fell out onto the front lawn. Lisa was right behind her. But as she neared the threshold, the door slammed shut. Lisa hit it hard. Her hands fumbled for the handle, locked. Her heart stopped. No. She turned. There was the Mark thing right behind her. And this time, it wasn't smiling. It opened its mouth. Lisa screamed. Everything went black. The next morning, Emily stood in the front yard, gripping the grass with her little hands. The house was silent, empty. The front door was gone, as if it had never been there at all. Emily's lips trembled. She could still hear her mother's scream, and remember how Lisa had shoved her forward, saving her. Tears ran down Emily's face. She turned. People were gathering. Neighbors, police officers, strangers. The world had come back. The street was normal again. But the house, it wasn't just empty. It was wrong, as if it never had been alive at all. Emily's little hands clenched into fists. She looked one more time at the dead, still house. Then she turned away, and she never looked back.